brave and offer bold ideas, just like Franklin Delano Roosevelt did in the 30s in the face of the Great Depression. It's why Donald Trump won. You know, neoliberals like Hillary Clinton didn't have an answer for the people that are so hurting in the middle of the country. Donald Trump, you know, whatever we think of him, he had bold ideas, which is, let's trash everything and start all over in a way that I'm not going to tell you this, but it's only going to...
The stage was set. Jane Fonda, the legendary actress and activist, had been booked on the talk show for an interview about her latest environmental project. But what no one expected was the firestorm that would erupt when the topic of Donald Trump was brought up. With a cool, calm demeanor at first, Jane smiled and answered a few light-hearted questions about her career and her passion for environmental activism. But when the host casually asked her thoughts on the current state of American politics and Donald Trump's influence on the country, the air in the room shifted. Without missing a beat, Jane's face changed. A subtle but noticeable shift from warm to determined. "Let's be clear," she began. "Donald Trump is a disaster for this country. He's a man who has only ever cared about his own ego and wealth. His actions have been nothing short of damaging to every institution this country stands for." The studio audience was stunned into silence. Jane's words weren't just a criticism, they were a bold public condemnation. She continued, not holding back, as if every word was carefully calculated to strike at the heart of his legacy. "He's used the highest office in the land to enrich himself, spread lies and divide us. And let me tell you this." Jane leaned forward, her voice growing even stronger. "What we are seeing now is the direct result of putting a man with no moral compass in charge of our nation." The host, visibly taken aback, tried to interject with a counterpoint, asking, "But he has supporters who believe in his vision." Jane didn't hesitate. "That's the most dangerous part. He's managed to manipulate the fears and frustrations of millions. But we cannot be afraid to call out the truth just because it makes people uncomfortable. The truth is, he's a liar, a manipulator, and an egomaniac who has done irreparable harm to this country." The words hung in the air. The audience remained silent, some nodding, others clearly shocked by the ferocity of Jane's words. She had never been one to shy away from controversy, but this was different. This was a direct, unflinching takedown of a sitting president, a bold challenge to everything Trump stood for. For all the talk about his so-called business acumen, let's remember this. He inherited wealth. He's used that privilege to avoid the consequences of his own actions, and in the process he's hurt more people than he'll ever admit. But what's even worse is that he's taught an entire generation that lying and manipulation are acceptable in public life. There was a pause. For a moment it felt like the world had stopped spinning. Jane Fonda, known for her activism and political voice, had just delivered a scathing indictment of a sitting president live on television, and the impact was palpable. The host, still recovering, finally asked, "Jane, do you think this will ever change?" Her response was simple but powerful. "We must hold him accountable. We cannot afford to forget what's at stake. The truth is, this country deserves better. We deserve leadership that represents the values we hold dear: honesty, integrity, and compassion for one another." As Jane sat back in her chair, the moment lingered. Her words had resonated with viewers across the nation, and in the coming hours, social media would erupt with clips from the interview. News outlets picked up the story, and political commentators discussed the weight of her remarks for days.
And misogynists. And you can pretty much know, you actors, right, that probably their father bullied them and called men that he felt were weak, he called them losers or pussies. And while you may hate the behavior of your character, you have to understand and empathize with the traumatized person you're playing, right? Thinking Sebastian Stan in The Apprentice.
The tension in the studio was palpable as the iconic Jane Fonda sat across from the host, her composed demeanor almost a sharp contrast to the heat of the conversation that was about to unfold. What was supposed to be a simple interview about her recent work in environmental activism quickly turned into an unexpected political showdown. When the host asked about the current political climate, Jane's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. What began as a casual chat quickly turned into a tirade against Donald Trump. "I've watched this country spiral for years," she began. her voice steady but laden with conviction, and a huge part of that is because of one man, Donald Trump. I've been around long enough to know when something's wrong, and believe me, this is wrong. The audience was drawn in, captivated by her unwavering tone. She didn't mince words or shy away from the weight of her statement. We've seen the harm he's done, the lies he's spread. And let's be clear, his actions aren't just political missteps, they're deliberate attempts to destroy everything that this country stands for. As the host tried to gently steer the conversation back to her environmental work, Jane was having none of it. She leaned forward, locking eyes with the camera as if speaking directly to every viewer. I've spent decades fighting for a better future, one where people are treated with dignity, where the planet isn't ravaged for profit, where honesty and integrity are the cornerstones of leadership, she continued. And Donald Trump, he stands for the complete opposite of everything I've fought for. He's a man who uses power to divide, to destroy, and to enrich himself at the expense of everyone else. The host was visibly taken aback, but couldn't hide his curiosity. But many people support him, Jane. They believe in his message, in his way of doing things.
That behavior is the behavior, it's the language of people who've been traumatized. And you have to hate the behavior, but don't hate the person. You know, I don't hate him. I feel sad for him. And what he's doing to the world and is just criminal. It's just criminal. It's terrible. But there's more of us, and we can make a difference.
Jane interrupted without hesitation, her voice rising with a mixture of frustration and determination. That's the saddest part. He's managed to prey on people's fears, their anger, and used it as a weapon to manipulate them into supporting him. But let's not forget the truth. This man is a fraud. He's not a leader. He's a con artist who got lucky. The audience began murmuring, some in agreement, others unsure of how to respond to the raw emotion in her voice. Jane didn't falter. She pressed on. Look at the mess he's created. We've seen the chaos, the corruption, and the sheer level of incompetence. He's not just a threat to our political institutions. He's a threat to the very fabric of this nation. Every time he opens his mouth, he tears this country further apart. The host, realizing that the conversation was heading into uncharted territory, attempted a more conciliatory approach, trying to bring a more balanced perspective. But don't you think that some of the policies he put in place were beneficial to certain groups? His tax cuts, for example, were praised by many. Jane shook her head, her expression unwavering. Tax cuts for the rich. That's not leadership. That's self-interest. It's about lining the pockets of the already powerful while ignoring the needs of the rest of us. And let's not forget the damage he's done to the environment, the planet, the very place we all live. He's taken every opportunity to roll back protections, to deny the reality of climate change, and to sell out to corporations that are only interested in their bottom line. She paused, gathering her thoughts before delivering what seemed to be her final blow. We need to remember who we are as a country. We're better than this. We deserve leaders who put people first, not their own egos. Donald Trump has shown time and time again that he doesn't have the ability or the desire to be that leader, and I won't stay silent while he continues to destroy everything we've worked for. The tension in the room was palpable. For a moment, the world outside the studio seemed to fade away. The weight of Jane's words hung in the air as the host finally found his voice. Jane, those are powerful words, but do you think we can ever move forward from all this division? Jane looked at him with a solemn gaze. I believe we can. But it starts with confronting the truth. It starts with holding people accountable for their actions and demanding better from those in power. And that's what we all need to do. Speak up, stand up, and make sure the truth doesn't get lost in the noise. As the camera lingered on Jane Fonda's determined expression, the atmosphere in the studio remained tense. The conversation had shifted from casual chat to a fiery political exchange, one that had captivated the audience in the studio and beyond. Jane Fonda, a woman who had seen decades of political shifts, social movements, and battles for justice, wasn't backing down. The host, still reeling from her powerful statements, tried to refocus the discussion. You've made it clear how you feel about Trump's leadership. But do you believe the American people have the ability to come together and rebuild after all this division? Jane's response was calm but filled with resolve. Absolutely, I do believe in the power of the people, but it's going to take all of us, people who are willing to stand up and demand more from our leaders. We can't wait for change to come from the top down. It has to come from the bottom up, from the ground level, from every single person who cares enough to speak out, to vote, to fight for what's right. Her words resonated, almost as if they were a call to action. The truth is, we've been complacent for too long. We've allowed people in power to shape our destiny without challenging them. The moment we stop allowing ourselves to be manipulated by lies and deceit, that's when change will come. We have to hold every leader accountable, whether it's Donald Trump or anyone else who seeks to divide us.
That we can really make a difference, number one. Number two, don't let the bastards get you down. I've been attacked and vilified more than most white people. And I wrote recently to Greta Thunberg, don't let them get to you, because it just shows that you're being effective and making a difference. Otherwise, they wouldn't waste all this time and breath.
The host nodded, impressed with Jane's unwavering passion. You're clearly someone who believes in the power of activism, but don't you think the constant political conflict is taking a toll on the country? Aren't we just growing more polarized? Jane exhaled, leaning back slightly in her chair, her voice softening for a moment, but the strength was still present. Yes, it's true, the division is real, and it's growing. But this isn't just about political parties anymore, it's about humanity, it's about the values that we hold dear, the values of equality, fairness, respect for one another. That's the heart of this nation, and we can't allow that to be overshadowed by greed, selfishness, and fear. Her gaze intensified as she continued, her words cutting through the noise of the political landscape. What's happening right now isn't just about Trump. It's about a larger systemic issue, a culture of corruption, a lack of integrity, and the erosion of the very principles that this country was founded on. The people who follow Trump don't just follow him because of his policies, they follow him because he gives them someone to blame, someone to point to, and it's dangerous. She paused for a moment, letting the weight of her words sink in. The audience was silent, hanging on every word she said. The host, visibly moved, took a deep breath before responding. Do you think the American people are ready for this change, or are we too far gone? Jane's eyes softened as she looked directly at the camera, her voice steady yet filled with a quiet intensity. We're never too far gone. The American people have always fought for what's right. We've always risen to the occasion when the stakes are high, but it's up to all of us now to do the work, to stay engaged, to speak out against the injustices we see, and to demand the change that we deserve. She then turned her attention back to the host, a final fire in her words. We've seen what happens when we let fear take over, when we let divisive rhetoric control the narrative. We can't afford to let that happen again. We have to stand together, despite our differences. The fight for justice, for equality, for the planet, it's bigger than any one person. It's bigger than Donald Trump. And I believe that we can and will overcome this darkness if we remain committed to what's right. The host was silent for a moment, clearly reflecting on her powerful words. The audience seemed to have shifted in tone, no longer simply passive observers of the conversation, but actively engaged in the gravity of the moment. The show, which began with a focus on Jane's environmental work, had now turned into something much larger, a rallying cry for truth and justice. As the interview came to a close, Jane offered a final thought, her voice calm yet firm. The power is in our hands. The American people have the power to change things, to hold those in power accountable, and we must use that power. It's time for us to rise up and demand the change we so desperately need. The host, nodding in agreement, smiled as the camera pulled back. Thank you, Jane, for sharing your passion, your insights, and your unwavering commitment to justice. It's been an honor having you here today. The audience applauded, and Jane gave a respectful nod, her expression softening as she stood up to leave. The words of this Hollywood legend and activist would undoubtedly stay with the viewers for a long time, sparking a conversation that would ripple across the country. As the applause began to fade, Jane Fonda stood with a quiet confidence, her eyes still fixed on the host. The studio had settled into an eerie silence, the weight of her words lingering in the air. It wasn't every day that someone of Jane Fonda's stature, a legend of Hollywood, would take such a clear and forceful stand against a figure like Donald Trump. Her outspokenness was both refreshing and powerful, a call to action that couldn't be ignored. The host, still reeling from her passionate remarks, leaned forward and addressed her once more. You know, Jane, we've talked a lot about activism and accountability, but do you believe there's still hope for unity in this country? It seems like every day, the divide only gets deeper, especially after the last few years. Jane Fonda didn't hesitate. Her voice was firm but compassionate. The divide is real, it's undeniable, but I think the divide comes not just from our differences, but from the lack of understanding of one another, from the failure of leadership to bring people together rather than pull them apart. When leaders like Trump fuel that division by playing on people's fears, it becomes easier for them to manipulate the truth. But that doesn't mean the country can't heal. We just need to be willing to see the bigger picture. She paused, her eyes scanning the studio audience, as if she were speaking to each individual directly. We need to remember that at our core we are all human beings. Whether you're on the left, the right, or somewhere in between, we all want similar things. We want safety, opportunity, respect, and the ability to live without fear of violence or injustice. But when we're constantly fed this narrative of us versus them, it becomes impossible to see that we share so many common values. The host, nodding thoughtfully, leaned in to ask a follow-up question. So you're saying it's about empathy? That's the key to healing. Jane's expression softened, but there was a quiet fire in her eyes. Empathy is essential, yes, but it's also about action. Empathy alone won't change anything. We can't simply sit back and feel for the people who are suffering. We have to actively work to make the world better. That means taking risks, standing up, even when it's uncomfortable. It means calling out injustice when we see it, whether it's happening on the streets or in the halls of power. She took a deep breath, as though bracing herself for the next difficult truth. And right now, the system is broken. It's allowing people like Trump to take advantage of our fears, our insecurities. He promises solutions, but what he's really offering is more division, more chaos, more destruction of everything that truly makes America great. We can't let that continue. We have to stand up and say enough. We have to challenge the status quo.
There are now a bunch of women who are running. Honestly now, you've seen this country through its changes and when it has not changed. Can a woman beat Donald Trump in your view?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Tell me why.
I happen to think, I do not agree with Obama, that this is not a time for bold ideas. I think this is exactly the time that people need to be brave and offer bold ideas, just like Franklin Delano Roosevelt did in the 30s in the face of the Great Depression. It's why Donald Trump won. You know, neoliberals like Hillary Clinton didn't have an answer for the people that are so hurting in the middle of the country. Donald Trump, you know, whatever we think of him, he had bold ideas, which is, let's trash everything and start all over in a way that I'm not going to tell you this, but it's only going to help the really rich. But you don't need to know that. I'm going to be there for you. You know, they were bold ideas and nobody else was speaking to them. I was all over the middle of the country before the election, and there was no noise from Hillary. So that was a big mistake.
The camera shifted between Jane Fonda and the host, the energy in the studio palpable. The audience, which had once been captivated by the celebrity interview, was now fully engaged in the broader conversation she was opening up. Her message was clear. There was no going back to the way things were. The time for change was now, and it was on each of them to make that happen. Do you believe there's a way back from this though? The host asked, his voice quieter now, almost reflective. Can we ever truly come together again, after all the polarization we've seen? Jane's eyes softened, the edge of anger that had colored her earlier words now tempered by something else, hope, perhaps, or determination. I do believe we can come together, but it's not going to happen on its own. We have to work for it. And yes, it's hard. Yes, it's painful, but isn't that the way it's always been? Change is never easy, but that doesn't mean it isn't worth fighting for. It means we have to push even harder. She leaned forward, her hands now resting on the table, her voice calm but unwavering. I've been fighting for justice my entire life, whether it's for women's rights, for environmental causes, for racial equality, or for the marginalized voices that have been ignored for far too long. It's not about winning the fight today or tomorrow, it's about committing to the cause for the long haul. We can't let ourselves become apathetic. We have to show up every single day and push for what's right. The host smiled, clearly moved by her words. You've certainly shown the way in that regard, Jane. You've inspired countless people, and I have no doubt your words today will do the same. As the interview came to a close, Jane Fonda gave one last powerful message to the audience. This isn't just about politics, it's about people's lives. It's about the world we're leaving behind for future generations. So I ask you all, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to sit back and let things continue the way they are, or are you going to stand up and fight for the kind of world you want to live in? Her gaze was intense, her words leaving a profound impact on the viewers. As the host thanked her once again, and the show wound down, Jane stood, giving a final nod to the audience before walking off stage. Her words had resonated beyond the screen, echoing in the hearts of those watching. The studio audience erupted into applause, a standing ovation that felt more like a sign of solidarity than admiration for a celebrity. Jane Fonda had not only spoken her truth, but she had ignited a spark in others, a call to action that was both timeless and urgent. As the cameras cut to black, her final words echoed in the minds of all who had heard them. The time for change is now. As the cameras continued to roll, Jane Fonda stood in front of the host, her powerful words still hanging in the air.
Peace.
The audience, still on their feet, applauded, their energy palpable. Jane, unwavering in her conviction, gave a small appreciative nod. The room began to quiet down, but the impact of her message was far from over. The host, clearly moved, looked directly into the camera, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. What Jane has shared today is nothing short of powerful. We've heard her call for action, for empathy, and for change. It's up to us now to take these words to heart, and to fight for the future we want to see. Thank you, Jane, for being with us, and for reminding us all of what's truly at stake. Jane gave a final knowing smile. Thank you for giving me the platform to speak the truth. But it's not just about talking, it's about doing. Let's get to work. With a soft chuckle, Jane turned and walked off the stage, the applause growing louder. The camera lingered on the empty chair, a symbol of the raw power of the conversation that had just unfolded. The host turned back to the camera, his voice now more intimate, direct, and to everyone watching, if you believe in the power of change, if you believe that we all have the ability to make this world a better place, don't wait for someone else to take the lead. Take action, make your voice heard, and fight for the future you believe in. We're all in this together. The host gave a sincere nod before adding, if you found today's discussion impactful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Stay with us, as we continue to bring you the voices and stories that matter most. We'll see you next time. The screen slowly faded to black, but Jane Fonda's words continued to echo, urging viewers to reflect, to act, and to never stop pushing for the change they wish to see. If you want to stay informed on more thought-provoking discussions, hit that subscribe button, and don't miss out on any of our upcoming episodes.